About a year ago, I was on vacation with some friends, and I wasn't dressed as a priest. And we ended up meeting some other people who were on vacation, and everybody starts to say to one another, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What kind of work do you do? And where do you live? And how about you?" So no one knew I was a priest, and they turned to me, and a couple of them said, "Well, where do you live?" And I said, "Well, I live in Malvern on the main line outside of Philadelphia." And everybody kind of just looked up like this and leaned in and paid attention. And again, they didn't know I was a priest, so I said, "Oh, I'm going to milk this a little bit." I said, "I live on a big estate on the main line." And one of the guys said, "How big is the estate?" And I said, "Well, it's about 125 acres. And they all started to pay attention to me now, thinking I lived on 125 acres. So I just left them hanging. I never told them what I actually did. Anyway, we're outside of St. Joseph's retreat house here, and you can see some of the 125 acres that we call home here at the Malvern Retreat House. The Sunday readings that we hear at Mass are the most important readings that we Catholics hear throughout the week. They're much more important than the readings at daily Mass or anything else that we read. So I think it's really important that we get back and read these Sunday readings and kind of reflect on them, and they can help us with our spirit. So what I'd like to do is talk about the second reading from this previous Sunday's Mass. Most of us were not able to go to Mass because Mass is just being celebrated privately by priests now. And so let's take a look at the second reading from Mass. We'll read from the lectionary, and this is a reading from Paul's letter to the Romans. Paul wrote the longest letter that he wrote to the Christians who were living in Rome. It's the letter to the Romans. Most of these were Jewish people who ended up converting to Christianity. So it's the letter to the Romans. So a reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans. Brothers and sisters, those who are in the flesh cannot please God, but those who are not in the flesh, on the contrary, are in the Spirit, if only the Spirit dwells in you. Whoever does not have the Spirit of Christ does not belong to him. But if Christ is in you, although the body is dead because of sin, the Spirit is alive because of righteousness. If the Spirit of the one who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, the one who raised Christ from the dead will give life to your mortal bodies also, through his Spirit dwelling in you. So, this reading is taken from the 8th chapter of St. Paul's letter. In the first 7 chapters, St. Paul only mentions the word Spirit 5 times. Mentions the word Spirit 5 times. Talks a lot about God the Father and a lot about Jesus Christ, very little about the Spirit. In this chapter, that all changes. The word Spirit is going to be mentioned 29 times in this chapter. So Paul is going to start teaching us about the Spirit. And what Paul says is this. There's a fundamental difference between those who live in the flesh and those who live in the Spirit. The flesh just is not the physical body that we live in. The flesh is some power at work in us that's opposed to God. It resists the promptings of God in our lives. That's what Paul means by the flesh. The opposite of the flesh is the Spirit. And Paul says that those who have a relationship with Jesus Christ, who are made righteous with God the Father, are given the Spirit, and the Spirit dwells within us. And this is Paul's great contribution to our understanding of the Spirit. It's the indwelling of the Spirit, that the Spirit dwells within each one of us. He also says in the reading that Jesus dwells within us. And later on, Paul will say that even God the Father dwells within us. This mystery is called the indwelling of the Trinity. It's really amazing. Lots of times we think that God is up there in the heavens, or Jesus was way back 2,000 years ago in Palestine, or that the Holy Spirit is out there somewhere. But no, we Christians believe that the Father, the Son, and the Spirit dwell within us. They indwell us. This is a great opportunity to remind ourselves of that. Sometimes we think we need to go to a church, the building, to be in the presence of God. And unfortunately, because of the coronavirus, that's not an option, at least to celebrate Mass publicly. Many of our churches are opened, of course, but not for prayer services or for Mass. So if your church is open, maybe it'd be good to make a visit there. But if you're not able to go to church, the God who dwells in that building dwells within each one of us as well. And we have to find time throughout the day to be aware of the presence of God within our hearts. I always encourage people to pray every day. Daily personal prayer is a non-negotiable when it comes to living the Christian life. Daily personal prayer. We have to pray every day. And I can't pray for you. We can only really pray for ourselves to find that time, that one-on-one time with God. So, daily personal prayer, non-negotiable, go for it. Also, to make it easier, I always say same time, same place. Same time, same place. Find the same time to pray every day. It helps to develop the habit of daily personal prayer. A lot of us are working from home, or a lot of us are now, unfortunately, we're unemployed or underemployed, and we have a lot more time. So we may have the opportunity to pray a couple of times throughout the day. So same time every day. Maybe pray in your home, go to your room, go out for a walk, go to a church or a chapel if it's open. Same time. The other thing that's very important is same place. It's really important to try to pray in the same place each day. Again, it just helps to develop that habit that's really, really important. So the Spirit is dwelling within all of us and within all of you who are watching this. This is the indwelling of the Spirit. So I would just encourage you to read and to pray using the second reading from this past Sunday. It's found in chapter 8 in Paul's great letter to the Romans. Let's just ask the Holy Spirit to come upon us now. Holy Spirit, you dwell within each one of us because we believe in Jesus Christ. We have a relationship with him, and because we have been baptized into Christ. Fill us with your peace. Help us to be aware of your dwelling within us, and may this bring us comfort and consolation. Amen.